growth took hold in the creation of billions of species of creatures, followed up by tens of thousands of sentient beings able to perceive thoughts and determine their own destinies. Oftentimes, these species took on very unique body structures, language, and culture. Sentient species ranged from the apex predators of Wookiees to the oversized walking symbols of diabetes, the slithering slugs called the Hutts. But both species aren't as odd to a human, but as the Hutts or Wookiees, some have the same traits or are even related to humans, deemed the humanoid aliens. Darth Killhoon was born into this galaxy as a human slave on Droman Caste, whom served under a human Sith Lord that used humans and humanoid slaves that worked in his house and were treated very well and even educated by the Sith Lord's household. His non-humanoid aliens were put to work in the vast jungles, clearing the land in a dangerous environment where oftentimes they would die in horrific ways. That populated all of the Sith capital, as it was a place of death and destruction, the likes of which no one has ever seen in the galaxy. This Sith Lord would install in his humans and humanoid slaves the idea of them being superior to the uncivilized beasts that the Republic view as sentient species. And he was serving them justice by sending the subspecies for hard labor while he educated the other slaves, and would oftentimes free them once they proved their hard work, and he would pay for them and apply them for Imperial citizenship. This view would be rubbed off on the young Von Killhoon before he ever earned the title of a Sith Lord. From Darth Killhoon's first battle at Tython to the Third Sith Civil War, Darth Killhoon had always known an empire dominated by humans, with few aliens given status above being a slave. Pretty much every soldier that served under him were human, due to the Sith Empire's preference for uniformity. He understood why humans were the focus of the Sith Empire's preferred population and military class. But being the Sith that believed in change to properly function, he slightly deviated from Imperial standards and policies. During the beginning of the war with the Eternal Empire, the then Lord Von Killhoon and his future wife, Lord Lana Kyles, was an unofficial apprentice of the Dark Council member of Defense, Darth Marr, and were on his destroyer when the Eternal Empire made themselves known to the galaxy, and the galaxy as a whole. Boarding pods launched into the hull while humanoid droids assaulted the interior. Lord Von Killhoon led a ragtag defense with his lover, Lord Lana Kyles, the first officer of the destroyer, and a handful of Imperial and Republic personnel through the decks, finding that these invading droids lacked the knowledge of proper infantry tactics, easily disposing of them. But they were just one band of fighters compared to an entire battalion's worth of troops, with hundreds still coming in. He knew it was a worthless endeavor to continue, and he lost communications with the rest of the ship as soon as the battle began. Without authorization from Darth Marr, he ordered the evacuation of the destroyer, but as his band of troops reached the escape pods, he lost a lot of Republic troops that used to make up nearly a third of their band, now only 10 remaining. Lord Von Killhoon would lock the doors to the escape pods as the Republic troops were first to run to them. Visually confused, the Republic troops quickly realized that the Sith Lord they had joined had no good intentions for them. He ordered the Imperial soldiers to open fire upon them, The Republic soldiers were shot until they were completely unrecognizable. The entire time, Lord Killhoon felt the two humans, a Cathar, two Twi'leks, and three Bothans, die only a couple meters in front of them. He felt all of their emotions as they perished. To him, the Cathar and the Bothan were nothing more than beasts that had taken human form. The Twi'leks he viewed as an unpractical near-human race, and the humans he pitied as they perished before his eyes. Why I tell you this story of Darth Killhoon's life, as it is a model of his view on aliens compared to his own race. He looked at one, their disgusting or elegant exterior. Essentially, if they aren't humanoid like Hutts or Trandoshans, for example, or if they are humanoid but have fur or are reptilian in nature, he will view them as no more than beasts that have taken their form. They are cattle that need domestication or extermination. If they actually have a sense of intelligence, Wookiees, Bothans, and Cathar come to mind immediately, and they are immediately killed. Humanoids that have flesh and are generally very similar to humans, he has little issue with. He even partook in procreation with a few humanoid aliens while he was on Zakul, while he was still finding his love, Lord Lana Kyles. He wasn't the most faithful of boyfriends, I guess. That when she was instituted in carbonite freezing in a prison upon Zakul, he fell into a depression as he struggled to get her back. This depression drove him to find pleasure in a multitude of ways. Zakul was very successful in their wars against the Republic and Sith Empire, and with that, many slaves came back with them on their conquests. Oftentimes, the humanoid alien women were sold into prostitution. Darth Killhoon hated slavery, and while he was on Zakul, he would perform some vigilante justice by sleeping with them, then going to their masters and slaughtering them with bolts of lightning, burning them until they were nothing more than ash. Oftentimes killing hundreds of gangsmen from cartels and syndicates before freeing their women and other slaves that they might have unless they were non-humanoid. In the 2 months he spent on Zakul, his conquests included 2 blue-skinned and 1 red-skinned Twi'leks, an orange-skinned Togruden, 3 of the green-skinned Mirlins, and a single pink Zeltron. Darth Killhoon had many conquests in the alien realm. At that time, he was still a teenager and relatively naive of the policy-making and the logistical decision-making process behind the anti-alien policies of the Empire. As in his youth, he often thought as an individualist, but as he got older, he started to develop a more collectivist mindset. What I'm saying is that he didn't just wake up and say, "I hate aliens," and he had very good reasons why he would eventually come to look down on even some humanoid species. Later in life, when Darth Nax formed the Sith Empire in the unknown regions that Lord Killhoon had navigated and charted for years after war with the Eternal Empire, and before his appointment to Darth Nax's Dark Council and given the position of 2 council members, being both head of the Sphere of Defense and Pyramid of Ancient Knowledge. Now this was unprecedented, but not unexpected. He was the most powerful Sith in the Empire, even if he couldn't tell that he was. This kept him in the military, but also introduced him into the bureaucracy of running an empire. He didn't discover, but expanded his knowledge of equipping armies and fleets, especially the gear given to their personnel, and he learned that it was simply easier on a military to have a standardized set of gear for everyone. In the Sith Empire, all their gear was designed for humans. This grinded down efficiency drove the idea that only the aliens that can live in the Sith Empire are the ones that can fit in the same equipment as a human soldier of the Empire. He coined it as the helmet test, as most oftentimes humanoid aliens have the same physical body from the neck down, with the head most of the time being the different aspect, like Twi'lek's pair of Leku's tentacles and the Togrutan montrals, that would prevent them from wearing a helmet made for a human. Other species like Chiss, which are just humans that after a few thousand years had their DNA mutated so much by Kassil's environment that they developed fully red eyes and blue skin, having no trouble equipping a helmet made for a human after the Second Sith Civil War, which Darth Killhoon remained neutral for the majority of it, choosing to use his armies and fleet to protect civilian population centers, while the forces of Emperor Darth Nax and the rebels led by a Darth Legatha, another Dark Council member of the Sphere of Offense, fought. He would eventually be forced to choose to begrudgingly fight for the Emperor with his faction of the military that was also called the Righteous Guard. After the forces of Darth Legatha marched on the Sith Academy, which was being protected by the Righteous Guard, he laid out his alien policies in the Righteous Guard, where everyone that had human physiology, whether they are human or alien, and didn't have fur, were allowed to join, which bolstered his numbers and laid the foundation for his further expansion on it to the rest of the military. After the events of the Second Sith Civil War, Darth Killhoon was given the title Superintendent of the Sith Academy and Chief of Staff of the Imperial Armed Forces, the Emperor having to do this or face Darth Killhoon's massive public support from both the human and alien populations that were scattered within their empire, being seen as a people's Sith. He further went to expand the Imperial military as a whole, basing it on how his Righteous Guard operated, and expanded conscription to aliens that could fit in human gear, which worked out well as this Sith Empire had recently integrated a lost Chiss colony world that the Chiss had lost a millennia earlier, with over 5 billion Chiss that were pretty open to the idea of the Sith Empire, as they were stuck in the industrial age development before the Sith came. Darth Killhoon would start allowing these humanoid aliens into the halls of the Sith Academy, an idea that enraged many of the older Sith, who still clung to the old ways. Many of these older Sith going and voicing their complaints to the Emperor, and the establishment elements in the Empire saying Darth Killhoon was betraying the Empire irreversibly, and he started to be snubbed by many Sith Lords at formal occasions, mostly for that issue, which only strengthened his belief that he was right and they were resisting his pragmatic approach. 2 years after the Second Sith Civil War, and 7 since the first, the Third Civil War would begin with the Emperor trying to kill Darth Killhoon and his entire family, using his elite private government militia solely devoted to him, the Sovereign Legion. Darth Killhoon would catch wind of this attempt on his life and his life of his family, while at the Sith Ball in the capital, sneaking out and taking his ship to intercept the assassins sent to slaughter his family before they came for him, but not arriving in time before they set fire to his mansion, it being the only casualty successfully taking his pregnant wife and 4 children up into orbit, where he had the Righteous Guard fleet of 300 warships stationed there. He accused the Emperor on an open broadcast with hollow recordings of his mansion burning to the entire empire, saying his reign of terror is at an end, and he will forge a new empire free from the stagnant ways of the past. But his fleet wasn't the only one in orbit, having to flee from the capital to launch his campaign and liberation of the empire. Between planetary campaigns, with him oftentimes leading army units in key battles, he had time to come up with his policies of his new empire. I had already discussed in a previous video of the constitution and government that he formed, along with his remaking of the Imperial military. But there was one policy that had plagued other Sith empires that he knew a lot on: the racial policy. Darth Killhoon was kind of a soft racist at heart. He didn't quite view humanity being the superior species, but above most of the disgusting aliens of the galaxy, whether they were intelligent or not. So he created a caste system that was tiered based on what you were and based on how you looked. It would consist of 3 castes, and these 3 castes would determine your place in this society, or not your place in this society. The first caste he called the Highborn. This list of species are essentially the humans and near-humans of the galaxy. If they can fit in the same gear as a human, their race is put in this tier. But say Zabrak can't just shave off his horns and be put on the Highborn list. Not will just be based on the species as a whole. Other requirements is that they have skin that is either the same or close to human flesh. If some humanoid aliens can use a human designed gear, but skin that is more like hardened plates like Weequay are simply executed for being abominations. Examples of aliens put on this list are the Chiss, Zeltron, Mirwins, Mirlukins, and Sith purebloods, and of course, the human overlords. These are the full citizens entitled to all the rights in the Empire, and for the men are expected to serve in the Imperial military. The second caste, Darth Killhoon called the Lowborn. Lowborn are the other humanoid aliens that possess minor traits that keep them from wearing a human-designed helmet or gear, but from the neck down are roughly the same. Species that fall onto this list are ones like Twi'leks, Togrudens, and Zabraks, with many more from there on. These individuals will typically be allowed partial rights and a lower stand in citizenship, not allowed to vote, but able to take part in the economy, work, and own property. The men oftentimes from this class serve many of the undesirable jobs like mining, factory work, farming, and construction, but they are second-class citizens, and Highborn will always get priority because the Highborn serve in the military and the Lowborn are barred from the military because of their special needs. They are allowed to become Sith if they are Force sensitive, but if they are, they will be separated at birth from their Lowborn parents and raised by Highborn Sith so they can become true Sith. These Lowborn Sith are the only Sith that aren't made into part of the Sith aristocracy. Instead, they will be indoctrinated to serve the Empire in the military for life. Most Lowborn Sith species are also not allowed to immigrate to the Sith Empire or come as refugees. That's why their numbers are always minimal, rarely rising above 1 or 2% of the population. They also have a restriction of 3 children per lowborn woman. Failure to comply will result in the harsh trial and execution of the mother and father or multiple fathers. That's why many of these women who get pregnant with a 4th child will oftentimes get an abortion, which is very highly restricted in the Sith Empire. The only case where a lowborn woman can have unlimited children is if the father or fathers are of highborn species. A human and Twi'lek have a half and half child is fine because those children will be raised as a half highborn and be given full citizenship as a highborn, and will be required to breed with another highborn, so their children will barely have the lowborn DNA a few generations down the line. The third caste of species that Darth Killhoon hated deep down to his heart, he named the Undesirables. Darth Killhoon put every supposedly sentient alien into this category, whereas their name suggests they aren't allowed in the Sith Empire. This caste is so overarching. The alien ranges from Hutts, Weequay, Trandoshans, Wookiees, Bothans, Geonosians, Cathar, and many more, are required to be shot on sight or killed in some manner. They are scum that soak resources from the highborn and even lowborn of the galaxy. They are to be eradicated from the Sith Empire, never allowed to step 1 foot onto its holy soil. Darth Killhoon even ordered extermination plans to be drawn up for all of these races, including one, for example, the one for Kashyyyk, where the Sith would unleash a virus that would infect and target Wookiee DNA. On Nal Hutta, they would just subject it to orbital bombardment after evacuation of their slaves that fall into the highborn caste. Geonosis would be orbitally bombarded until utter oblivion until every single one is dead. The list goes on. All results in complete destruction of at least all their homeworlds and any known colonies of their species. Darth Killhoon created his empire for his caste of Highborn, intending to exterminate the Undesirables and breed out the Lowborn in at least their borders. His people are indoctrinated in this caste system, and over 98% are highborn of some kind there, drowning out all the voices of the others. Darth Killhoon knew it might be immoral, but it was necessary to forge a new identity without falling to alien depravity like the Republic had. Too many Sith, he was a radical. In his eyes, he barely did anything. He didn't share sympathy for many other races. He just viewed them in a more equal light and practical light. Maybe a few Chiss women from his time in the Ascendancy also changed his mind a bit. At least for the navy blue-skinned race. In a way, generations after Darth Killhoon's death and his empire goes on, many will view the Highborn as an almost unified species, like how the humans saw themselves in Darth Vitiat's Sith Empire. But time will tell. As the generations go on, the Sith expands with a never-ending population explosion and the endless colonization of the untapped worlds of the unknown regions, terraforming and colonizing them with highborn species, where the Sith Empire of Darth Killhoon started with 7 and ended with 12 populated systems. Oftentimes in the early billions, as by the time of the destruction of the false emperor Darth Sidious, years after the Battle of Yavin, they control 17,000 systems, with 2,000 of them populated. The average human sustainable world having a population range of 9 billion, with far more space to grow as they shared the unknown regions with the Chiss Ascendancy and had hid themselves from Grand Admiral Thrawn's Empire of the Hand. They thrived with the military might, outfitted with countless billions of troops and several hundreds of thousands of warships. They stand ready to defend against any threat the galaxy has to throw at them and respond with the fury and determination of their founding emperor, Darth Killhoon the First.